I think Jim's doing a fantastic job, and I think he's breaking new ground with building a multi-branded media company for the digital age. It's built around brands like SB Nation, Recode, Verge, brands that are focused on consumers in areas that they're passionate about, sports, in tech, in food. And I think they're breaking new ground and sort of taking those brands and then not building them on the internet, but then extending them through podcasts, through television, through channels, and actually promoting some of the key spokespeople they have, Kara Swisher,
right.
Ezra Klein. And so I think they really have the whole flywheel figured out. And I think that will build an advertising business and today have 170 million passionate users coming to their various brands.
You know, so you've been around the digital content area for a long time, and there's so much promise when it comes to digital content. People will say that this is the golden era. Like there's a real demand for content and for quality content, and there's certainly an audience for it. You can look at the massive numbers of users that have piled up to some of these places, but there are a lot of places that are still trying to figure out how to monetize that, and you go basically all the way up the line. Amazing potential. How do you eventually find that way of getting people to pay for all of that content?
Well, I think the core model of advertising driving a lot of the financials is still going to be the predominant one. Mm-hmm. I do think there are a lot of companies experimenting with consumers helping to pay a little bit of the freight. If you go back in the history of the media business, back to newspapers, 80% of it was from advertising, 20% from subscriptions. Magazines were 50-50. Cable, the consumers pay a little. So it's possible, and I think actually probable, that there will be models that come forth where the consumer pays a small part of it. But overall, I still think it's an advertising-based business, and that's why I think it makes so much sense to build big audiences by having a multi-branded strategy and extending that through all forms of media, such as podcasts and television and online.
Is this a situation where a few big players will really dominate and it'll be hard for others to pick up, or is this going to differ from what we've seen in broadcasting or what we've seen in magazines or other places like that before? I
think it will eventually get to a few big players, but I think it's early days. I think even though Vox is well developed and BuzzFeed is well developed, these kinds of companies that have built brands and then are extending them through multiple points of syndication and distribution, I think the game has a lot further to go before the true winners are all determined.
We've seen some of the big original content providers be sold off to corporate parents. AOL just recently selling off to Verizon. Yahoo right now up for talks. Is there a future as an independent company for some of these things, or eventually do many of these content providers need a big corporate parent? What do you think in the situation of Vox?
It's so early to tell. I think it's very possible Vox one day could be a public company. I also think it's very possible someday some other company will own it. Mm-hmm. But I still think there's a lot of runway between now and those points.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Yahoo. Obviously, you've seen what's played out very publicly with the situation there. Starboard just coming online and taking some seeds. I think what shocked people is watching the decline at Yahoo in terms of ad revenue falling off, in terms of the earnings per share. If you look just 2 years ago, they were earning 38 cents in the first quarter, down to 15 cents, down to 8 cents. I mean, they have a massive number of users. How are they getting knocked around like this and losing out on some of the ad spending that's out there that's obviously there and willing to go to the big players?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, when I left, it was about $7 billion in revenue, and it's now down to $4 billion, I think. So. And with just stagnation in the user base. I think it's the core issue is one that just hasn't been solved in the last few realms of leadership, which is that defining what Yahoo is to its users. When you think of Google, you think of search, even though Google owns YouTube and a host of other properties. When you think of Facebook, you think social, even though they bought WhatsApp and Oculus and other properties. When you think of Yahoo, they had a shot to be what Vox is doing in terms of taking content and distribution and really focusing on news, sports, finance, the things that uniquely Yahoo was terrific at, and really build that whole flywheel. But unfortunately, because of the breadth of what Yahoo does, they sort of became kind of mediocre in so many properties. So they're in a tough. It was a tough hand that Marissa was dealt, and I think she's done her best to play it. But at this point, it really probably needs to have a new owner situation.
Yeah, that's what you think is the best situation, a corporate owner that would then be allowed to focus things like that?
I think it's the inevitable situation, and I think I hope that the next owner can do something to revitalize the spirit of the core things that made Yahoo very, very unique and can create a distinction in consumers' minds about why they love Yahoo still. I think it will be helpful if it's private or part of a much larger corporation to achieve that.
Why? Just because it will give them the independence to do the things you think need to be done?
Yeah, I think just the intense media scrutiny around Yahoo has been, it makes it very difficult to make some of the tough choices that really need to be made.
If you had to put a number on it, the valuations we've heard have been tossed around anywhere from $4 to $8 billion. Some people have even said $10 billion. What do you think is a fair price for it at this point?
I don't know. I do think that it's so. Right now, there's a lot of interest, as I understand it, and so the incentive is to bid high to get to the next step. Right. I think we'll see the real values in a later stage.